A wealthy businessman came home early from a trip, only to catch his wife fooling around with another man by the pool. But he didn't confront them. Instead, he quietly slipped into the bedroom, where the messy scene sent his blood pressure through the roof. Still, he didn't say a word to his wife. Instead, he began crafting an elaborate plan for revenge. That evening, his wife came home and seemed a little surprised to see him. "Weren't you supposed to be back next week?" Mike didn't bother explaining. He just walked over, pulled her into a warm embrace, and whispered how much he loved her.
I love you.
I know.
The moment she turned away, he raised a handgun and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The gardener outside heard the gunshot and rushed to the door to check. Mike fired 3 rounds through the window, sending the gardener scrambling. Then he moved his wife's body to a different spot, picked up the shell casings, wiped them clean, and tossed them on the floor. He threw his blood-stained clothes into a fire and washed every trace off himself. Once everything was in order, Mike didn't leave. He sat and waited for the police, or more precisely, for one person in particular. Sure enough, officers arrived shortly after, and Mike immediately requested a private conversation with an officer named Paul. That's right, Paul was the man sleeping with his wife. At that point, Paul had no idea who the victim was. He didn't know Mike, and he didn't know the woman's real identity. It wasn't until he noticed the photos on the wall that it hit him. The woman on the floor was his lover. He rushed over and found she was still breathing, barely. Meanwhile, Mike stood behind Paul with the gun. Paul quickly grabbed the weapon and tackled him to the ground. Officers outside stormed in and restrained Mike. His wife was rushed to the hospital, and as Mike sat in the back of the squad car, he flashed Paul a chilling smile, as if everything was going exactly according to plan. 3 days later, a preliminary hearing was held. The prosecutor assigned to the case was Will, a sharp young attorney with a 99% conviction rate. This seemed like a slam dunk. They had the murder weapon, and Mike had signed a full confession. The trial was supposed to be a formality, but then Mike made a series of moves that stunned everyone. He waived his right to a private attorney, insisted on representing himself, and demanded they skip the preliminary hearing and go straight to trial. Will found it a bit odd, but he was confident he could handle a case like this in his sleep. Then a phone call from a colleague stopped him cold. A closer analysis revealed that the gun recovered from Mike's home showed no signs of having been fired. The shell casings found at the scene had no fingerprints. There was no gunpowder residue on Mike's hands, and his clothes were spotless. None of it could serve as direct evidence. That's when Will realized why Mike was so confident. He had covered every single base. Still, Will wasn't too worried. "The confession is still on the table," he told himself. He signed it. "I'll make it work." Before long, the trial arrived. Mike looked perfectly calm, even casually sketching on a notepad in the courtroom as if the whole thing had nothing to do with him. The proceedings began, and Will called his first witness, Mike's gardener. The gardener testified that between the time the shots were fired and the police arrived, no one entered or left the estate, making Mike the only suspect. Next came the second witness, Mike's wife's attending physician. Based on the bullet's trajectory and the severity of the injuries, the doctor concluded that Mike clearly intended to kill. His wife survived only by sheer luck, which constituted attempted murder. The judge then asked Mike if he had any objections to the testimony. Mike, still doodling away, casually said he had none. Finally, Will called his third witness, Officer Paul,